Okay. So, Gemma, will you, Jen, will you bring the live stream? Good afternoon, everyone. I will now ask the live stream to be started, if it hasn't been already.
We are live, leader.
Thank you very much. Before we formally start the meeting, I'll go to each councillor present in turn to confirm that they can hear and be heard. This is a legal requirement for virtual meetings. Where practicable, please also have your video switched on so that you can be seen by those in attendance and the public watching. I will begin with Cabinet members. Councillor Felicity Norman.
Hello, everyone. Yes, I can see and hear you, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ellie Chowns.
Thanks, Leader. Yes, I can see and hear you.
Councillor Pauline Crockett.
Good afternoon, Leader. Yes, I can see and hear you.
Councillor Gemma Davis sends her apologies. She'll be joining us later. Councillor John Harrington. Councillor John Harrington, can you hear and see me?
Sorry, my spacebar wasn't working. I can see and hear you. Thank you, Leader.
Councillor Liz Harvey.
Yeah, I can see and hear you.
Thank you. Councillor Ange Tyler.
Yes, Leader, I can see and hear you. Thank you.
Councillor Jenny Bartlett sends her apologies. Councillor John Hardwick.
Good afternoon, Leader. I can see and hear you. Thank you.
These are Cabinet support members. Councillor Peter Ginman.
Good afternoon, Leader. Yes, I can hear and see you.
Thank you. Councillor Alan Selden.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I can see you, Leader. Thank you.
Next group is group leaders or representatives. So Councillor Terry James.
Yes, Leader, I can see and hear you.
Thank you. Councillor Jonathan Lester.
Yes, thank you. I can see and hear you.
Thank you. Councillor Bob Matthews.
Yes, Leader, I can see and hear you.
Councillor Trish Marsh.
I'm sorry, Leader. Apologies from Trish Marsh.
Thank you. Councillor Carol Gandy, Scrutiny Chair.
Yes, Leader, I can see and hear you.
Thank you. And Councillor Alyssa Swinglehurst, who is also a Scrutiny Chair.
Good afternoon, Leader. Yes, I can hear and see you. Thank you.
Thank you. We also have a number of officers attending who will be introduced as they are called upon. So I'll now formally open the meeting. Thank you. The agenda papers and other relevant information for this meeting are available for public viewing on the Herefordshire Council website. The Council is streaming this meeting live on the Herefordshire Council YouTube channel and making an official recording. To ensure that recording quality is maintained, please speak as clearly as possible and keep background noise to a minimum. Microphones should be muted when you are not speaking. Please ensure that mobile phones and other devices are turned to silent. Others are permitted to film and photograph and record our public meetings, providing that it does not disrupt the business of the meeting. As we move through the agenda, in addition to discussion by Cabinet members, I will invite group leaders or their representatives in turn to provide views and questions from their group on each item. Where appropriate, I will call on scrutiny chairpersons to comment on behalf of their committee. If an attendee loses connection and it is not possible to recover the connection within a reasonable amount of time, the meeting will continue as long as a quorum of Cabinet members remains able to hear the proceedings and be heard. Voting will be undertaken electronically using the voting software within the virtual meeting platform. Only Cabinet members may vote. In the event that electronic voting is not possible to use or there is a technical failure, I will ask each Cabinet member by means of a roll call to indicate if they are for, against or are abstaining. The results of the roll call will only be recorded in the minutes of the meeting where there is a requirement to do so. If a Cabinet member has not been present for the whole of the discussion on an item due to technical failure, they should not vote on that item. So the first item is apologies for absence. Could the clerk confirm? I know of Gemma Davis and Jenny Bartlett and Trish Marsh. Any others?
No, Leader, I don't believe I have any further apologies.
Thank you very much. Declarations of interest. Are there any Schedule 1, Schedule 2 or other interests for items on the agenda today? As a matter for transparency reasons, I need to declare that I own a property which is at one end of the Southern Relief Road, or at least within half a mile of the end.
Leader, could I just declare the Western Bypass should pass straight through the middle of my ward, so I declare that interest.
Thank you. We do have the Stronger Towns Fund being discussed, so if there's anybody who might potentially have an interest through either direct or indirectly, it would be interesting to do that. Councillor Tyler, I don't know whether you, as a city council member, there are some projects which are being supported by the city council.
Yes, I would have to declare an interest with the Hereford City Council for the electric buses on the Stronger Towns Fund.
Thank you. Any others? Okay, thank you. So I'll pass on to the minutes of the previous meetings. On the
Pauline.
Sorry, Leader.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, Leader.
Yes.
The proposed Western Bypass goes through my ward, so I'd like to declare that interest.
Thank you. Camp goes through my ward as well, so yes, you could add that. Okay. So, sorry about this. Just I've lost a screen somewhere. Sorry about this, my apologies. Normal service will resume hopefully in a moment. Right, I'm back with you. So the next item is to receive questions from members of the, and I'm sorry, no, we're on to the minutes, aren't we? Minutes of the previous meetings on the 1st and 3rd of December, no matters of accuracy have been notified to the monitoring officer. So I'll ask the cabinet members to confirm that they agree the minutes by an electronic vote. Non-voting attendees will be moved to a breakout room for a few moments. They will be automatically returned to the main room when all eligible votes have been cast. Please can non-voting attendees now be moved out of the main room and the number of voting members be confirmed.
Chair, we have 7 voting members. The poll is on the screen. They are set out into the 1st and 3rd of December. So if we could have a vote on each of those and then hit submit, please.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you. So if votes would be cast, and when you have the results, you let us know.
Just waiting on the one vote there, Chair. Yeah, leader still waiting on the one vote. Has everybody submitted for both the 1st and 3rd of December and hit the blue submit button?
Do you want to do it again, Jen?
Aha, I have the result. Okay, so both sets of minutes have been approved unanimously, Chair.
Thank you. Perhaps you would bring everybody back into the room. Thank you. So those minutes have been approved. So I'll move on to item 4, which is to receive any questions from members of the public. We have received a number of questions. Members of the public have the opportunity to submit questions to Cabinet in writing ahead of the meeting. We have received a number of questions for this meeting, and responses have been published as a supplement to the agenda papers. Those who have submitted questions have been given the opportunity to submit a written supplementary, or to send an audio or video recording, or to join the meeting to ask their questions live. I will now ask the clerk to let us know how the supplemental questions are to be dealt with, going through the questioners one by one. The first questioner is Ms. J. Gallagher. Do we have a supplemental question?
No, she does not wish to ask a supplementary question, Leader.
Thank you, Sarah. Mr. Franklin?
Yes, Mr. Franklin is joining us as an attendee to put his question in person.
Okay, Leader, Mr. Franklin should be with us.
Okay. Is he on the screen, Mr. Franklin?
Yep, I can see him, bottom right. Well, my bottom right, anyway. You're on mute, Mr. Franklin.
Yes.
Right. Yes, I'm sorry. I was trying to unmute myself, but anyway, I think it's worked out okay now. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can see you. So do go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members and officers. Thank you for the reply to my original question. My supplementary really is this. So the legal advice is that stopping the Western Bypass scheme does not mean that the strategic housing site cannot progress. Although you say developers will need to demonstrate appropriate mitigation, although and no costs are indicated with that, so it may be a deterrent. But my question is, while all things may be possible, not all things are equally likely. So looking at the best, worst and most likely outcomes and taking account of the additional housing and commercial development which might be expected. So are you looking not just at the scheme itself, but at the whole economic impact of the scheme? What are the long-term revenue benefits or costs of the 6 proposals selected for consideration from the Hereford Transport Strategy Review?
Yes, Councillor Harrington, I don't know whether you are in a position to respond.
Yeah, that's quite obviously that's going to have a lot of detail, Mr. Franklin. If you're happy, I will ask officers to provide you with that detail in a written response. But just if we can, if I just raise the issue again that you raised in relation to the road, it is fairly common knowledge that when the core strategy was approved in 2015, the inspector made it clear that she did not approve that. She did not approve the allocations of land in the west of Hereford, in the city, on the basis of a bypass road being included, because in her opinion, there was considerable risk associated with that being delivered. So those housing allocations were, as far as I understand it, allowed through by inspection on the basis that there would be, as in any other place, in any other city that you are, decent transport plans being provided at the same time as that applications came forward. We took legal opinion on that, and that was confirmed. So as far as we think, we are not slowing anything down or reducing our revenue. We can continue as we are, but I will come back with more clear detail on the specific questions that you asked. Thank you, Mr. Franklin.
Thank you, Councillor Harrington. You've got a few questions today. Ms. Sharp, I don't know whether Ms. Sharp has a supplemental question. Sarah?
She does, Leader. She's provided a written supplementary question, so I will put that on screen for you and read that on her behalf.
Thank you.
So Mrs. Sharp's supplementary question is as follows. Your answer spells out a key point about the Western Bypass, option 14 in the review, that walking and cycling elements together with measures to restrict car use such as congestion charging and workplace parking levies would be integral to significant reductions in congestion, i.e. reductions not achieved by the road itself. So that all parties can be clear on this, what level of fees are required on congestion charging and workplace parking levies to prevent the induced demand that would negate the benefit of spending over £100 million on any road scheme, and how would these be applied across Hereford?
Councillor Harrington.
Oh, sorry. I don't know if anyone could lip read, but just having a look at the question again. Sorry, Leader.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
I think I understand. I think it's going to require technical response. But what Mr. Sharp is saying, that if we're prepared to spend 256 million on the Western route option, or the package that includes the Western route, the route as identified now, which I take it has the support of the opposition, includes the need for congestion charging and demand management, including potentially workplace car parking levies. I don't know the detail, but we can get that. We can make it. I can ask the consultants to come up with an estimation of those fees. But it is to me, and always has to be, been to me, an apparent contradiction that you build a road and then to try and negate the effect of induced congestion, and essentially the bigger the roads you build, the more cars you're going to get on them. To try and negate that, you then start charging people for using their cars. It seems a flawed logic. But the point about fees, the specific question about fees, I will ask officers to try and provide a response with consultants.
Thank you, Mrs. Sharp, for your question. I don't know whether you can take the question down, Sarah. You want to leave that up for the moment? The next question is from Mrs. Richards. Does she have a supplemental?
No, she doesn't, Leader.
Thank you. Next is Mrs. Wegg-Prosser.
Again, she does not have a supplementary question.
Thank you. Question 6 is from Miss Mariavetska. Does she have a supplemental question?
Yes, she does. She's provided that as a written question, which I've put on the screen. She asks, thank you for the link in answer to my question, which shows that of the £5.972 million planned to be spent on working up the Western Bypass, 2.422 million was funded from revenue streams and 2.45 million from prudential borrowing. When the Hereford Times are reporting that there is a £12 million bill if the road schemes are axed, would someone be able to explain that this large sum of money has already been spent, a large proportion taken from previous revenue budgets, and which should have been used to maintain or repair existing road infrastructure over previous years?
Harrington, I don't know whether you... I'm sure
yes, no, thank you, and thank you, Mrs. Morawiecka, for that question. It's a very important question. I noticed the headlines this morning saying that we've got a £12 million bill to cancel these schemes, as if that's extra money to pay. It's not extra money to pay. The situation very often is, well, the situation is that when a council tries to develop a new scheme, it has to use its revenue. So in other words, it has to use its own revenue budgets and officers to work that up and to pay consultants to come up to provide a certain certainty and proof that we can then go and ask for capital funding from elsewhere. It's an accounting exercise really that we need to now rebalance that and realign that, and to explain it better than I will actually ask our section 151 officer to make that clear, and perhaps Councillor Harvey would like to add something.
Yes, Mr. Lovegrove.
Thank you, Leader. As Councillor Harrington has said, we're not going to be faced with a bill for the £12 million in addition. And as I think is in the text of the supplementary question, this money has been already spent, so we're not spending new money or spending again. It is a bookkeeping adjustment to move the capitalised spend that's on our balance sheet, in effect, to our revenue reserves and adjustment against reserves. So it's not new spend.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Harvey might like to add a few words.
Yes, Councillor Harvey, you want to comment?
Yes, well, in addition to Mr. Lovegrove's point about this being an accounting action, there is a certain amount of money that has been written off already in terms of revenue spend in previous years. So this 11.8 million simply refers to funds that are sitting on the capital lines that the decisions before us in the report paper refer to.
Thank you very much. Moving on then to, thank you, Mrs. Morawiecka for that question. Moving on to Mrs. Prothero.
Mrs. Prothero does not have a supplementary question, Leader.
Thank you. And then Mr. T. Meadows. Does Mr. Meadows have a supplemental question?
He does, Leader. He's provided the following written supplementary question. Thank you for confirming that even after spending over £200 million on new roads, the average journey time saving is less than 5 minutes, which is the time someone can spend looking for a car parking space. I note that this time saving is only achieved if new roads are accompanied by demand measures such as workplace parking levies and congestion charging. I understand some local politicians, while supportive of new roads, are opposed to such demand measures, despite them being required to prevent increased car traffic generated by new roads. If new roads are constructed without implementation of demand measures, would average journey times reduce or actually increase?
Yeah, Councillor Harrington.
Thank you. That's a very good question from Mr. Meadows, and the simple answer is they would. In my opinion, they would increase. The whole reason why they're included in the road option for the Western Bypass and is to counter the effects of induced demand, induced traffic, and it's a very good point. If you're going to spend £256 million on trying to reduce congestion, and you're only going to achieve a 5-minute reduction in time journeys, and by doing that, you're going to have to charge people in the town more money to come in and use those roads, which actually we support as an administration where it's appropriate, but the opposition is totally against this idea, then it seems extremely logical. I will ask consultants to give us an estimation of what a road on its own would bring in time journeys without those other measures, and I'll return that to Mr. Meadows as soon as possible.
Councillor Harrington, could I just ask you to perhaps elaborate a little bit on this? Because members of the public hearing this 5 minutes will think, well, how can it possibly only be 5 minutes? You know, they either won't believe it, or they'll say, you know, it's just spending all this money just to save 5 minutes is just not worth it. So, I mean, where does the 5 minutes come from? Is this a fact? Is it just an opinion? Is it from experts? Where does it come from?
Well, all of this, all of this work is an estimation. It's a considered professional estimation from consultants who've been working on this, and their estimation it's an average that is taken as an average journey times. There are people who will sit for slightly longer in traffic. There are people who will move through traffic much more quickly. But on an average journey, as was originally provided in the response to Mr. Meadows, I think an average journey in Hereford is about 16 minutes in normal time and about 17 minutes in times of peak flow. If we spend £256 million building a Western bypass, we will save, and it'll take a decade to be built, by the way, we will save about 5 minutes apparently in journey time, but that is only measured up to 2026, because that is the furthest in the future that we had a certainty to make those projections. So the journey times could be, there may be even increased journey times.
But this is, as near a sort of scientific fact as you can get, the same way as the other figures and estimates they put in the report. So,
I think the best thing I can say is that if you're looking to build roads for other reasons or bridges for other reasons rather than resilience and to allow access into the city, you've got to wonder why you're spending so much money to achieve so little. That is the simple fact.
Yeah.
And so far in the future, people think the bypass is coming tomorrow. It's not. It's been 12 years in planning by previous administrations, Conservative administrations, and it's 10 years at least in the future. That is a simple fact. And we've spent £12 million on plans, and we have nothing to show for it in terms of actual physical effect, reduction in congestion, anything on the ground.
Thank you, Councillor Harrington. That finishes the questions. We'll move on, obviously, to debate ourselves some of the points which are made in those questions. Thank you for the questioners. We now move on. So item 5 is to receive any questions from councillors. We haven't received any. I suspect they're saving their powder for the council meeting next month. So item 6 is the Hereford Transport Strategy, which is what we have been talking about. This is for Cabinet to set out its recommendations to Council with regard to stopping the Western Bypass and Southern Link Road schemes and amendment to the capital programme, and for Cabinet to agree allocation of earmarked revenue reserves to cover the cost of decapitalising the 2 road schemes in the event that Council agrees to stop the schemes. For those who have an agenda pack, it's on page 37. We've sort of touched on this and answered some of the questions, and the Section 151 officer has touched on it as well. They're big numbers, but it's not actually money leaving the council, and it's not any additional cost. But I will leave the Cabinet Member, Infrastructure and Transport, Councillor Harrington, to introduce this paper.
Thank you, Leader. I will keep my introduction brief because this report is quite a technical report, which would be better explained by officers and the Cabinet Member for Finance, as it sets out the governance requirements that are required to seek full Council's agreement to stop the 2 current road schemes, as advised by the Monitoring Officer at the Cabinet meeting on the 3rd of December just gone. If approved today by Cabinet, this report will go to full Council on the 2nd for a vote by all members. At Cabinet next week, before the vote at full Council, we will be laying out what we wish to take forward as administration and how we would fund that. So this report includes the recommendations that these 2 packages, the Hereford Transport Package, which includes the Western Bypass route, and the Southwide Transport Package, which includes the Southern Link Road, which are in the capital programme to allow them to be funded, are removed from the capital programme. And because it is a budget decision, this is a decision which must be made by full Council. It also recommends that the decapitalisation costs associated with this decision are covered by earmarked resilience reserves, and that Cabinet confirm this Council's decision, following Council's decision. This is not further spending on these projects. This is realigning our accounts to balance the cancellation of these projects. I will ask our officers to give a clear understanding of that in the room as they go through the report and answer any questions. It is unfortunate that the previous administrations chose to follow an extremely narrow-focused transport strategy over at least a decade. that paid consultants a huge amount of this money and a huge amount of our revenue that could have been better used to repair our potholes and clear our drains to much better effect. And administration that, for whatever reasons, failed to take into account the need for rational and appropriate plans, for different types of plans, not for a single plan, the need for expediency to implement some plans earlier than others, and some plans earlier than the decade in the future that their plans still center on, which would be almost 22 years without any congestion relief or alternatives to car use in the city. An administration that failed to recognize the need for different types of measures to give us the best transport infrastructure in the most efficient way, especially when you consider our traffic patterns in the city, where around 50% of residents in Hereford travel less than 1.2 miles a day on their daily journeys, whether it's to go to school, to go shopping, to go to work. Where we could have removed traffic lights and funded other measures that would have made our existing roads better and freed up congestion to allow people who have to use their cars because they live out of town or they've got no choice but to use a car through disability or other choices. When we could have supported bus systems and services to a much greater, more coherent and effective way and returned a hop-style system of buses to the city and county. An administration that failed to recognise that we could have made improvements not only to our walking and cycling infrastructure, but failed to consider the smaller capital projects that we could have brought forward to improve the current network, putting 2 lanes on the bridge at Roman Road, removing traffic lights, as I've mentioned earlier, returning junctions to roundabouts, upgrading routes around our existing county-wide network around Bridge Solars and Tram-In, like councillors such as Councillor Matthews and Kenyon have mentioned. I don't blame previous administration for decisions that were made. It is unfortunate that they made some of those choices. The thing I do find more difficult is in this current climate we live in, the fact that we've signed up to a climate emergency, that we've recognized it, that the previous administration supported that and carried that through. The fact that that hasn't made a difference to the way that they look at transport to be more efficient, to respect the climate emergency, to look at different ways of traveling around the city and making our people move, that I find more difficult to swallow. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. I shall leave this to officers to present and look forward to questions.
Thank you, Councillor Harrington. Who do you wish to go first? Councillor, Mr. Burgess or?
Steve Burgess will go first. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Harrington. Thank you, Leader. I think, in effect, in both of your introductions, you've covered the meat of the report. It may be worth us just looking in more detail at the financial resource section of the report. And I think this also relates back to the question raised by Mrs. Moriacha in the public questions. And at the table at paragraph 13 has got the full costs of the 2 schemes over their lifetime, and an indication of the overall costs and the amount which is subject to the decapitalisation, which is the 11.8 million referenced in the recommendation. There is just a few costs associated with closing down the projects which are identified at paragraph 14, just a few outstanding costs and some work to do to conclude the projects. So that's included in that figure of 11.8 million. And the other aspect within the resources section that we're clarifying is the removal of the 2 projects from the capital programme. So that's covered in paragraph 17. And within the capital programme, whilst the SWTP is still in the capital programme, there is no budget in that project. So this means in reality that the Hereford Transport Package would have an outstanding capital allocation of about 3.75 million, which would be withdrawn from the programme. In terms of the legal implications, there are project level implications in terms of closing down those 2 schemes, 2 road schemes around the CPO, compulsory purchase order process. And I think the advice from the legal team is that whilst that CPO process has been commenced, it would lapse in March 2022 if the council takes no further action. And I think there is one outstanding blight claim that's being discussed with a landowner, which could be resolved following the decision. I think there's probably no other further details. It's perhaps more useful to open up the report for discussion.
Leader, before we do that, could I just ask Mr. Lovegrove just to give a bit more clarity on the issue of realigning the budgets?
Chairman, I'm very happy to do that. As Mr. Burgess has mentioned in section 13 and 14 of the paper, it is spelt out the financial implications of the decision before you. On HTP, we are going to decapitalise £4.4 million. This is money that isn't spent and capitalised. Clearly, that will now be decapitalised, taken out of our balance sheet, and likewise the same process for the 7.4 million that has been spent and capitalised on the South Wye and transport package. So that's the total of £11.83 million. I'm very happy to answer any other questions about the accountancy treatment.
Thank you, Mr. Lovegrove.
Right. Well, over to Cabinet members. I don't know whether we want to start off perhaps with Councillor Harvey, if you've got any further comments and points of clarification.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Well, the decision that we've got before us today is, as the report sets out, consequent on the recommendations that Cabinet made in the meeting on the 3rd of December. Now, because we decided that we want to try and have an effect on the travel experience in the city on a much shorter time frame than had previously been being proposed, looking at what can be done to improve the travel experience in terms of investing in public transport and in improving the ability to walk and cycle safely in the city for city residents. That means that we can have a much faster effect on the lived experience of moving around in the city than waiting for a road to be delivered. And the fact of the matter is that the road, certainly the South Wye transport package, we unfortunately inherited a situation where the road as planned could not be delivered. It couldn't be delivered in the time frame in which the money was required to be spent by government and by the Marches LEP, because we found that we had a botched procurement process for the construction contract, which meant that there was no chance of us being able to rerun that procurement process and deliver the road, even though we did go ahead and spend several tens of thousands of pounds saving the planning permission for that road. It simply transpired in discussions with the LEP that it wasn't possible for us to adjust the finance spend timelines to be able to take that scheme forward. So I draw Cabinet colleagues' attention to the information that's in paragraph 14 of the report, which shows that the estimated remaining project costs for the South Wye transport package are £50 million on top of the money that had already been spent. And with that government grant unable to be awarded by the LEP, and we didn't even have a business case that was fit to release the money, road project just simply could not go forward. And from a finance perspective, our financial regulations are quite clear, as are the advice received from our external auditors, that we need to remove that programme from our capital projects list because we simply aren't going to be able to proceed with it. And if we are going to do something else, we have to put a new case together. So this is simply following our own constitutional requirement for the South Wye Transport Package, that we need to remove the programme from the capital programme and pay the capital programme back by transferring money from the Resilience Reserve, where we have a significant balance. So that's dealing with the South Wye Transport Package. The Hereford Transport Package, which we have just shy of £4.5 million that has been spent on capital for that, and over £5 million in the past that was spent from revenue funds, which were diverted from other things that we could have done with them, filling potholes, improving the existing road network. I think money was also moved, according to the answer given to Mrs. Morawiecka's public question just earlier, from the Severe Weather Reserve. And I think you only need to look on the news and the live video updates in terms of us across the county looking at yet another flooding incident. It's a shame that that money was spent taking this initiative forward when, as you can see in paragraph 14.1, the estimated remaining project costs for that are 350 350k for additional money, but the estimates are that it's going to be 250 million in order to be able to deliver that. So the information that we had at the meeting in December was that the additional benefits that road would deliver offered very poor value for money when you consider the improvements that provide over and above the improvements that were already going to need to be provided by the walking and cycling and bus service measures and the demand management that would need to come alongside them. From a finance point of view, value for money is a really important dimension of us having to demonstrate that we're spending public money in a responsible way. And in conjunction with the adoption of the climate emergency and ecological emergency situation, it simply doesn't stack up financially for us to proceed with a project which is going to cost so much additional funding. Fortunately, it doesn't mean that funding is not available to us to take alternative projects forward. And, I'm certainly pleased that the decision that was taken in December last year recognised that for resilience of the network, a second city river crossing is an important thing to provide city travellers with. Whether you live here or whether you have a business here and need to move around the city, having a second river crossing is an important thing for us to try and deliver. And it was helpful, I think, to have our local MP confirm that his support for the proposed link through to the Ledbury Road when he met with the scrutiny committee on Friday last week. So I'm very hopeful that he will provide the assistance and support that we need in discussing how to take that project forward as a new line in the capital programme, and in order to meet the requirements of our financial regulations, the removal of the capital line for the Hereford Transport Package, the HTP, is the second element of the overall movement of reserves that you have here in the report at 11.8 million. So from my responsibility for finance on Cabinet, I am comfortable that we have the reserves available to be able to make these adjustments in our accounts, and it's the only sensible thing to do with these two projects not in a position to be able to be proceeded with, for different reasons for each of them. But the end result is that we need to grasp the nettle, recognise that these projects aren't going to happen, acknowledge that in the way that we present our information in our capital investment plan, and move forward with providing the city with better transport solutions on a shorter time scale, and work with our MPs to secure any funding that's needed to deliver that second city river crossing.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. There was just one point towards the beginning. I may have misheard, but I just want to make sure that you know, we're not misquoted. With the Southwest Transport Package in 14 Roman little 2, I think you referred to project cost or some money coming back. I think you said 50 million, but I think it's probably 50,000.
Yes, apologies for that. The outstanding sum involved is 50,000. The overall cost of delivering it was 27 million pounds. And that funding from government through the LEP that we were not in a position to be able to unlock because a compelling business case was not able to be put forward.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? No, I see none at the moment. I don't know whether my screen is showing the hands. Let me just one moment. No, okay. I'm a little bit. Councillor Tyler, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Leader. It's just going back on the question of the blight notice. If once the schemes are removed, what happens with the blight notice?
Well, that's a technical and legal question, I think, Councillor Tyler, but I believe that we're in discussions with the landowner, and we're coming up with a solution. But if the decision is carried on the 2nd, then that changes everything. So we'll wait and see.
Okay, I mean, I coming from more of a corporate environment rather than a council environment, I must confess I find some of these figures really quite difficult to follow. I'm a little bit reluctant to go into any detail, either because I might get it wrong or confuse things further. But there are the two packages, the HTP and the SWTP. And with the Hereford Transport Package, it looks as if money's there spent as a revenue expense, which is 5.1 million. But on the Southwest Transport Package, no money has been spent on the revenue perspective. And that just looks quite strange to me. But I'm told originally, if you looked as the project was going on, money would have gone in the revenue line. But once the line of the road was chosen for certain, then all the revenue that was incurred was just flipped into capital. That's how we end up with so much in the capital line and nothing in revenue. Whereas, as you'll notice on the HTP, it's fairly even between revenue and capital. Had the HTP gone ahead, then all the money in revenue would have gone through to capital, which from a corporate perspective, I find just smoke and mirrors. I don't know whether others would agree with that. It just all makes it very confusing. But I've probably made it worse now rather than better. Okay, well, Councillor Harvey, you're going to correct me or
Well, I think I'm in a sense going to stick up for the last administration. I mean, it was an option that was available in terms of being able to capitalise that revenue spending, and that was seen as a more efficient way of dealing with that, because you spread the cost of the investment that you're making over the lifetime of the asset that you're investing in. So, and it also brings the revenue to you. So, I'm not saying that, you know, were we to be in a similar, you know, position, that wouldn't be the right decision to make. But it was a decision that was taken at the time, and in a sense, it helps to explain why there appears to be zero revenue investment on that particular transport project. But the other one the other one with the 5 million for the other one has just been written off over time. And indeed, there are projects that we have going on at the moment which haven't reached the stage where we're in a position to put a capital business case together, and those also need to be funded through revenue. So they will be ticking up an element of revenue investment that will show in their total costs, and that's just the reality of the way that the finances have to be run. We can't capitalise investment until we've reached a point in the process where we can make a compelling business case to do so.
So moving forward, if Councillor agrees and we go ahead with an eastern route, at some point in time, any revenue expenditure we incur could at some time in the future be flipped into capital, and that's something which we might look at the time to do. Is that correct?
There may be circumstances where that would be possible, but I think equally there will be circumstances where we just have to absorb that early development cost as revenue expense. And when we get to the budget meeting of Cabinet next week, we'll be able to identify where there are funds that are being made available in the revenue part of the budget in order to be able to press ahead with the alternative transport solutions for the city, which were the decision back in December Cabinet. So we've got funds available to give the public confidence that we are actually moving ahead with those other transport solutions, so that they can get a better travel experience in the city faster than would otherwise have been the case.
Leader, if I could just make a further point on that, you know, as Councillor Harvey said, you know, outlined, you know, this is an accountancy method, you know, and to me, all accounts is a dark art of some sort. The issue is not how you raise the capital, or the issue is how long you keep pursuing a policy that is not working, how long you keep putting money into a hole that just is gobbling it up because you cannot make your case work. You cannot make your transport strategy case work, so the government won't give you money. So you keep spending more and more of our money to try and come up with the sort of arguments for it, and they just have never added up, in my opinion. Which is why after 12 years we are no further down the line.
Okay, I'll move now to questions from group leaders. My custom is to do this in alphabetical order, and the person who's at the beginning ends up being at the end for the next question, as it were. So I'll start off with Councillor Hardwick, and then Councillor James, Councillor Lester. So first of all, Councillor Hardwick.
Well, I haven't really got too many questions. As members will be very much aware, Herefordshire Independents have always considered that an eastern river crossing is the best option. And I'm very pleased to see the administration is now going that way. The only question I might ask is that with regards to the Southern Link Road, although we can't continue as it stands at present, I think it would have merit in trying to upgrade the existing roads in that area to actually alleviate problems down at the Belmont roundabout. You know, if we get an eastern bridge crossing over to the Ledbury Road, we need to consider that improving the route between the Ross and the Abergavenny Road is built into that in some way as well.
Okay, I think we'll put that one on one side for Councillor Harrington to address.
Yeah.
Part of the.
Yeah, I could.
But so we'll take.
Should I answer that?
No, I think John, Councillor Harrington, we'll take that with perhaps with all the other questions. Councillor James.
Thank you, Leader. I know this will come, and we don't want to repeat ourselves ad nauseum now, as opposed to when we come to full council. But I do caution you against putting out this smoke and mirrors nonsense about that it's merely an accountancy process. The decapitalisation of funds, that has implications. What we're going to be short of in the coming years are revenue income. Now, if we decapitalise these sums, then they have to ultimately come out of either revenue reserves or our total revenue budget. And that will have implications over the coming years. I assume that the council is looking to put up a substantial council tax rise. Well, that is going to make the situation as far as revenue is concerned even worse. You cannot do that. Don't pretend that this is just an accountancy process. It will have serious implications for the revenue budget. We have only 3 sources of money, 4 actually, of money for our revenue. That's charges to the public, council tax, business tax, and the limited amount of money we get from central government for revenue. So this will definitely have implications for our revenue. And don't go to the public and say, well, unfortunately, we're in a terrible position. We've got to put up the council tax above the rate of inflation. They won't wash. It won't wash. They know that this is going to cost them a lot of money. And they know that. Already, I understand that the model farm project in Ross and Wye has lost its funding from the LEP because of this policy. It will have serious implications for our budget. There are people in the city losing their jobs in the retail sector. What are you going to say to them? What are you going to say to them? We're going to charge you to come to work more? We're going to put up your car parking charges for your customers who come there? You know, this is a disaster for the hard-working individuals. The problem is we've got too many councillors who've never actually worked in the real world.
Thank you, Councillor James. Councillor Lester.
Thank you very much. Can I just apologise in advance because I'm going to have to leave the meeting at 4 o'clock. Unforeseen circumstances with childcare, I'm afraid. So I think there's time for me to comment now. With regard to the Schools Capital Investment Programme, we're fully in support of that. So please, can that be noted? And we note the submission of the town's bid and wish the council well with that. But onto the pressing item at this stage. Obviously, it's the view of the Conservative group that this is the wrong decision. And as a matter of public record, a huge amount has been done already to prepare the Western Bypass. There just isn't the time to go into just how much work was done, which was, you know, all of the necessary steps to get to where we were. We were on the verge of some major steps forward, and to suggest anything else is not really to have the full picture of where we were with regard to the process. were we in administration, we would have been nearly 2 years down the line to progress these projects. We would not have lost the funding for the Southern Link Road. The fact that there was a procurement problem doesn't mean that the funding would have been lost at all. And in fact, this administration is arguing that they shouldn't pay back the LEP money because there's still plenty of time to deliver the package. The point about through traffic and traffic movements in the city, the review of the bypass projects the transport projects confirmed that the majority of transport is either trying to get in, out, or through Hereford. But onto the main substantive point, using reserves in this way is a huge waste of taxpayers' money. It's bad enough in isolation, but as Councillor James has said, when the administration is proposing a 4.99 increase in council's tax, to be spending council taxpayers' money in this way and have nothing to show for it is lamentable. It's just proposing to throw money down the drain. Those reserves could be used in many different ways to meet the financial issues that the council's got. And of course, the Conservative group is especially aggrieved because the reason why those reserves are there is because of the prudential financial management that we displayed over a decade. So I would also like to say that unlike the picture that's been presented, it must be remembered that the transport packages that were being developed by the last administration were for a bypass scheme that included lots of active travel measures that would improve opportunities for walking, cycling, and buses. This is a fact that just seems to have been lost on everyone who thinks that it was just for a road building scheme. But the active travel measures are only going to really successfully work in an integrated transport network, and that includes by providing a bypass, and it was intended that all of these schemes, not just road building, but the transport package would be funded by government. In practice, it's difficult to see how you're going to implement these active travel measures without it going hand in hand with a bypass. Now, obviously, the administration is not against building roads because you're in favour of an eastern crossing, as I understand it. However, I just think this demonstrates what we believe is that you're going in the wrong direction. With regard to getting funding, Jessie Norman was referred to at the scrutiny meeting on Monday, warned the administration that the credibility of the council has been harmed by wanting to cancel these projects, so that may prove very difficult to get funding elsewhere at other times. His exact wording, please check the matter. It's a matter of public record, so please check that. And also, there are far more environmental issues to address going east, and it will probably present more problems to the existing network than solutions that it will try to provide. And the administration's own report ruled it out as being included in any of the packages. I think our view is that, summed up in order for the economy of Herefordshire to grow, we need the infrastructure to achieve this. And this just isn't a quick fix or talking about till 2026. This is looking for the long term. Issues about induced demand or congestion or whatever, those are problems. But if you do not provide for the transport that is already there and already causing problems and the infrastructure needed, you're just going to harm the economy and you're going to disincentivize people who want to use Hereford as a service centre, and they're just going to go elsewhere. The last point I would make is that the true cost of cancelling the bypass isn't the £11 million figure. We've got to add the review, the cost of the review, which also talked about the best way to provide resilience is to and to ease congestion is to choose a package that includes the Western bypass. So you spent nearly £500,000 on the conclusion that we already knew. If you add to that the fact that if the council then has to pay back the £3.8 million to the LEP, then the figure is going over £16 million. But I don't think that in any way is, even though that's a huge sum of money, that's not going to be the true cost, because the true cost will be the lack of growth in our economy, and Herefordshire needs that growth to prosper. I do not believe that if we don't, well, I believe that if you provide the infrastructure, then house building becomes a matter of course. If you ask developers to provide the infrastructure, then that will really undermine the viability of any of their projects. So I think that will act as a massive disincentive to house building in Hereford. Now, I listened to all of the points that the Cabinet has made and understand the reasons that they would argue in that way, but we cannot agree, and we do look forward to the debate at full council. Thank you. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Councillor Lester. Moving on then to Councillor Matthews.
Leader. If any of our local business people are listening to this debate, I've got a feeling they'll be contacting the Welsh Government in the next few days looking to find business elsewhere. Members will be well aware that I've always strongly opposed the Western Bypass, solely on environmental cost grounds and in support of local businesses who, in my view, have always indicated that an eastern route, together with substantial improvements on the A49 south to the M50 at Ross-on-Wye, would be for the most beneficial to the local economy of this county. The True Independents, therefore, support the recommendation to stop the Western Bypass. We are, however, of the view that if the Southern Link Road in its present form is stopped, officers should be immediately instructed to investigate other options more cost-effective and environmentally less damaging. That is essential. It's vital that we have a road link between the A465, Belmont, and A49 for heavy goods vehicles en route to the enterprise zone. And also to make full use of an Eastern River crossing. Vehicles will still use Aywood Lane if it's left in its present form, causing untold damage and danger to other motorists and local residents. It's also important that more traffic is taken off the A465 at Belmont to improve the present serious congestion and air pollution issues within the built-up area of Belmont. That was the whole idea of taking the traffic, and I thought that was the aim and ambition of this administration and every other, was to take the traffic out of the city centre. I then, folks, refer you to page 39. The delivery plan also sets out other related key projects and initiatives which will be supported by progressing the development of transport strategy and delivery of preferred options, including EC24, continue to support development of the Hereford Enterprise Zone. Unless you take these measures so the traffic can get in and out unhindered and safe, we're going nowhere fast. So I think some serious considerations, Councillor Hardwick mentioned it, and I hope Councillor Harrington will take it on board, that we've got to have that link road, otherwise it's what we're trying to aim to achieve will not be delivered. And it goes without saying, Leader, until we get a proper infrastructure policy in place and up and running, the economy of this county is going to suffer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Matthews. Councillor Selden.
Thank you, Leader. I don't intend to prolong this debate at this stage. I'm sure the group will have more to say at full council going forward. Just to say where I agree with Councillor Matthews, as though it's not a part of this package, is that the route between Hereford and Ross-on-Wye on the A49 is in desperate need of improvement, and that's something that, if we are going to improve the business uptake at the
in Rotherwas, that would be a great advantage for us and something that we need to look at in the future. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Right, so it's back to the Cabinet before we vote on this recommendation. Does anybody want to comment? Maybe Councillor Harrington, you might want to comment on Councillor Hardwick and Councillor Matthews' comments about the Southern Relief Road.
Yes, thank you, Leader. They both raise a fair point. I think the issue is until you build a bridge for the resilience and for the reasons that he's outlined, putting investment into a road that in the meantime is going to do nothing but channel traffic from one road onto another is not helpful. It's also important to remember that the vast majority of our traffic is trying to get into Hereford. 7% is trying to bypass it. 40% doesn't leave the city limits. And the other percentages are going just in or just outside. So we're talking about access roads. And I think that's what Councillor Matthews is talking about as well. Access roads and the resilience of another bridge. And we can look at upgrading. There are many lanes, as I've mentioned, at the top of Hereford, the Roman Road Bridge by VW Garage. Why has that never been turned into, a 2-lane bridge? Why has that kind of resilience never been considered? Why hasn't the network in other places in Hereford been considered for improvement? So I take his point entirely, and I will speak with him and Councillor Hardwick about that. Just to touch on a couple of other sort of points that made by Councillor Lester and other folks. It is true that active travel measures were, part of the schemes, but they were really quite poor cousins. They were really given a very small amount of budget, and actually those budgets kept reducing as the costs to procure, the other schemes, the road schemes, seemed to increase. And it comes back to this point. We are trying to support the economy, and his proposals means that we won't have anything to support that economy with for another 10 years, at least. The Southern Link Road was given funding in 2014. We came in as an administration in 2019, and there's very little that appeared to have been achieved. Yes, there was plans on the table, but nothing had been achieved and nothing had been approved by the government. The DfT refused to sign off funds. We hadn't produced a coherent business case. We'd had a failed tendering process, which for some reason, and I don't know why, was kept kept out of the public domain from August of 2018 until we came in as administration in 2015. We then had such a little time to do anything. Whether we wanted to proceed with the road or not is irrelevant. We didn't have the time to do that by the drawdown funds in March 2021. Put us in an extraordinarily difficult position. We went to the LEP to see if we could vary that funding and get money for buses, and we were not supported by our board members, and we were not supported by the opposition. We can't leave Hereford floundering for another 12 years. We also can't ignore the climate emergency. We keep coming away from this. That is the most important thing we are dealing with. And we don't have to take a hard choice. We can support the climate emergency and we can get Hereford moving. And the way we do that is we get the 50% of people that travel less than 1.2 miles every day in Hereford to travel in a different way, because we give them decent buses and we give them decent cycling routes, and we make it safe for kids to go to school by walking or cycling. And then people who do have to use the roads come in on much less congested roads, and people who have to use cars in town can use them. We've got to be more grown up. We've got to have better strategy. We haven't got strategy. And one of the reasons why we haven't had funding after 12 years is because our strategy has not been good enough. And essentially, despite all the promises and the winks and the nudges that may or may not be given by government ministers and MPs and everyone else, they simply haven't given us the money because we have not had any cases that have stacked up. And that is where we are. There was no funding allocated for the Western Bypass, not a penny, not a penny. Any proof of that, I would love to see it. There was funding allocated for the Southern Link Road on the basis that a coherent business plan was produced. And after 5 years, it was not produced. So let's concentrate on the good stuff that we can do. Let's get a bridge crossing in for resilience and for access and to support our business in the enterprise zone. But let's also do the stuff that's important, the most important stuff in terms of respecting the climate emergency, getting people to travel a different way in our city and our county, Let's concentrate on that. Let's forget the past. And in a way, the previous administration has been slightly the victim of circumstances. We live in a different world, even from 12 months ago, let alone the last 3 or 4 years where the environment has become much more important. We've seen what's happened during COVID. We've seen the way people operate now. We're all on a screen now talking to each other rather than having driven in from miles away to do so. Let's think strategically. Let's make small gains. Let's do it for a fraction of the price of the $250 million it's going to cost us a decade in advance. There is no sense in doing that. Let's clear the slates. Let's start again. Let's pay off at whatever we've got to pay off, and let's start properly.
Thank you, Councillor Harrington. Councillor Chowns.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to respond to a couple of the comments that were made earlier. First, I'd like to respond to comments made by Councillor James and remind Councillor James that our 3-group administration is working really hard to work together in a very positive framework. And I think it's unhelpful to hear comments like, councillors have no experience of the real world. I just made a list on the back of an envelope. The Cabinet includes people who currently work in the NHS and as teachers, people with experience working as farmers, as vets, as delivery drivers, as midwives, as executives in defence companies, as senior lawyers in major industries. You know, I could go on. We have experience working in the real world, and it's simply rude to use that sort of language. The second point I'd like to make is in relation to the details of this particular decision, and just I think it's time to face a few facts. It's time for the Conservatives to face a few facts. We're clearing up a mess left by the previous administration. This isn't new spending, it's money that, if it has gone down the drain, it's the Conservatives that put it there. It's really time to call out the fantasy that a bypass will solve congestion issues in Hereford. Only 7% of the traffic is trying to bypass the city. And it's time to call out the fantasy that a bypass would be good value for money. It is more than 3 times more expensive as alternative methods that would achieve the same level of congestion reduction. And that's what we're going to do. I am sure any business person presented with the choice between 2 options, one of which was more than 3 times more expensive to achieve the same outcome, would choose the one that offered good value for money. So we do need to build infrastructure for the long term. That means taking the climate crisis seriously, as Councillor Harrington said, absolutely. And it also means taking good value for money decisions. And that's what our recognition of the realities of transport planning now is leading us to do. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Right. Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Councillor Davis wanted to come in.
Sorry, Councillor Davis. Yes. Sorry.
Yeah, just to say, I'm removing myself from this vote because I haven't heard enough of the debate to make a vote.
Thank you. I think just one comment. Councillor Vance is quite right that our MP said that we lacked credibility. At least, I mean, that's presumably assuming. I mean, I'm saying he's right. He may not be, but that's what he said. I think there's an enormous opportunity for Hereford to gain great credibility in central government, because we are going to do things differently. We are acknowledging the climate emergency. We are going to help the government to meet its targets. We're doing differently. And there are people who are looking at Hereford and thinking, wow, yeah, we'd like that. Of course, down in South Wales, they cancelled an extension of the motorway there. Well, we're doing that on a smaller scale. And I just think that it's an opportunity which we should be looking for. And I'm excited at Hereford being seen as a beacon, as doing something different. So let's just get on with it. I think I'll move to the recommendation, if I may. In the board papers, monitoring officer, am I okay to carry on at this stage? Thank you. So the recommendation is following Cabinet's recommendation on 3rd of December 2020 to stop the Western Bypass and Southern Link Road schemes, that A, Cabinet also recommends to Council that the Hereford Transport Package and Southway Transport Package be removed from the capital programme, and B, subject to Council agreeing to stop the Western Bypass and Southern Link Roads, Cabinet instructs the Chief Finance Officer to allocate the Finance Resilience Earmark Reserve amounting to 11.833 million to cover the costs associated with the Western Bypass and the Southern Link Road schemes being decapitalised. So if we can vote on that recommendation, the voting screen will come up. I think those who are not involved in the vote will be removed.
The voting number for this is 7, Leader, and I'm just waiting for the non-voting members to leave. Okay, the poll should be on the screen. Leader, those recommendations have been approved unanimously.
Thank you very much. So that recommendation has been carried. Is everybody back? Yes, thank you. So item 7 is the school's capital investment programme. Welcome, Councillor Davis, back from your meeting. Thank you. This is to approve proposed expenditure of the preliminary works budget included in the capital programme. This is page 45 of the agenda pack. And I will ask the Cabinet Member Commissioning Procurement and Assets to introduce this in association with the Cabinet Member Children and Families.
Leader, just to note that Councillor Lester has had to leave the meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Selden.
Okay, thank you, Leader. This is another one of those ones where we're trying to do joint working to make sure that there's proper moves towards committee structures by using different expertise in Cabinet to get the right results for the residents of Herefordshire. So I'm introducing it, but I work fully with Councillor Norman on making these decisions. Before you is a basic, I'm not going to go into it too much, it's a basic report telling you that we need to do some feasibility studies on 3 schools. It's really important that we do feasibility studies. It ensures that we've got an accurate amount of money to put forward for projects. We know, everybody will have known of previous projects where they have gone over. We are trying to change that. We're trying to change that mindset and make sure that any figures that we have are accurate and allow us to put the right amount of money forward. You will notice that what we're talking about in some of these schools is that the government do provide formula-based grants to assist with those capital projects to increase primary and secondary capacity, but it would fall to the council to cover any shortfall in building. So we need to make sure that we get it right. There are parts of Westfield schools particularly that are in a poor condition and are not fit for purpose. This does not allow for a learning environment where children and young people with learning disabilities can thrive and have a great start in life. Hand over to Councillor Norman or over to the officers to introduce the report.
Thank you. If I could just add a couple of points. So thank you very much, Councillor Davis. Agree absolutely with what you've been saying. I think it's pretty clear what we're wanting to do is to improve the learning environment opportunities for our children and young people. They will do their best in good quality conditions, and that's what they deserve and we want to provide. We also, as you can see, want to meet our environmental aspirations, reducing carbon and so on. We want the work that we're going to be doing to be contributing to that. So we're hoping to reduce emissions by 40% over the next 5 years, and to have buildings that meet passive house or equivalent standards. And of course, we need to meet the capacity. Some of our schools are very overcrowded indeed, so we need to be able to do what we can to improve on that. And as we've heard, particular mention of Westfield School, which is a special school in Leominster, very poor conditions, overcrowded, really needs some work and improvement on this. People doing wonderful job there. It's an excellent school, very good work, and with circumstances simply aren't as they should be. So particularly keen that we are able to do some improvement work there. So yeah, happy to go along with this and support very much that we take this step.
We have two officers present, Karen Knight and Quentin Mee. Karen or Quentin, do you want to need to say anything at this stage?
Yeah, good afternoon, Leader, councillors. What we are trying to do today is seek delegated authority to spend up to £475,000 from the preliminary works budget to undertake feasibility studies in a number of the county's schools. The output of these feasibility studies will include an outline plan for each school, an estimate of cost, and will also take into account the Herefordshire Council's carbon management plan. We'll then use this information from the studies to inform a programme of capital projects which will be brought back to a future cabinet meeting for consideration. Now, this spend comes in two strands, the first of which is basic need. Now, the council, to ensure that the school places have a duty to create them places, each year the council has a population pupil forecasts return to send to the DFE, or otherwise known as a SCAP return. This is a mandatory return that we have to do each year. And through this return, where we identify demand exceeds capacity of the schools, the DFE allocates a formula-based basic need grant. This is then intended to contribute towards the capital costs of adding places. Based on the council forecasts, in the last 3 years, central government has allocated approximately £9.6 million of basic need funding up to and including this financial year, which is divided into primary and secondary allocations. It must be noted, Leader, that we will not be receiving any further grants for the next 2 financial years. 8.9 of the 9.6 is remaining, of which 2.3 million has been committed to increase the secondary capacity at John Curle High School. This also includes an uplift of £260,000 to meet the sustainability ambition of the council. The feasibility studies will inform how best to increase the capacity of the county's primary and secondary schools estate where it is most needed. This could include remodelling existing spaces within an establishment and/or extensions to provide additional capacity or spaces. This applies both in maintained schools, voluntary aided schools and academies. It is likely that the funding received from government will not be adequate to cover the council's duty to supply places. The second strand of this request is Westfield Special School, which is a 2 to 19 school situated in Leominster, catering for children and young people with learning disabilities. There are parts of each building on site that are in poor condition. Over time, significant amounts of maintenance and repair have been affected, but the existing buildings still cannot be brought up to a required standards of safe, high quality accommodation that we aspire for all of our Herefordshire children. In addition to the condition of the buildings, they do not meet the government's guidance on capacity needed for the current pupil accommodated at the school. Given the number of pupils, the design of the building, there is not enough appropriate space to support the provision of an appropriate curriculum for the pupils with special educational needs. This was compounded in a recent fire risk assessment, which identifies that all 3 buildings on site are unsuitable for this type of provision. The proposed feasibility study will look at options to provide significant improvement accommodation with space to provide a full curriculum so that pupils of Westfield have a safe learning environment. There is currently no government grants for suitability, and local authorities do not receive basic need for grants for special schools. So any investment following the feasibility study will have to be funded fully by the council. Leader, if there's any questions, I'm open to take them.
Okay. Quentin, I'll start if I may. So there's £475,000 committed here. So that seems to me a lot of money when you don't end up with anything concrete. So what assurance do we have that this money is going to be well spent? Is this spent on architects, electrical engineers, that kind of thing, third parties? What sort of procurement are we going to go through? Is it going to be locally concentrated? And am I right in thinking that this will take it to a certain when it can then go out for tender, or would there be further architects' fees and all that kind of stuff? So lots of sort of questions of the value for money, I suppose.
Indeed, and quite right too. The money was spent on essentially a consultant will go out to the schools, look at what is needed from a curriculum point of view, and what space we would need to get bums on seats, so to speak, and deliver that curriculum. It will also include fees and any contingency if required. Not so much the bricks and mortar and shovels in ground at this point. That will be another stage. But the value for money here is that you as a council and future decision maker is well informed. So there's a number of schools we need to look at, both at primary and secondary and Westfield separately, and to do the amount of work we need is why we've come up with this budget figure. But what that can then inform is that we don't do works in the future that would be over budget or we don't need to do. So it is a value exercise so that you are informed in the future to make good decisions.
Okay, yeah, no, I can understand. Any questions from anybody? I see no hands. Councillor Harvey. And then Councillor Jim.
Well, I'm not as concerned as you are, Leader, about actually paying money for feasibility studies, because to my view, it's about us planning properly before we act. You know, some of the issues that we're having to unpick as an administration are because the world has changed around us, and this council, and that planning, that stepping back, that preparation and reflection hasn't necessarily taken place. And I think, you know, we all want to try and make sure that our children have decent school environments in which to study and to learn. We all know how important it is to have an environment that nurtures learning and is a nice place to be in. And if these feasibility studies and plans help us to spend the money that we do have available to us wisely and well, then to my view, it is money well spent. And you know, I'm really supportive of having an up-to-date and regularly reviewed and refreshed capital strategy for our schools. So I welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Jinman.
Yes, thank you, Leader. One point I would just like to throw into this, which I'm sure is going to be a national issue, but that is, as a consequence of COVID, we've learned that we really have to think about the design of schools in a rather different way in order to ensure that there is space, that there is proper airflows, that there is the right temperature, given those added airflows. I don't think that, you know, we do need to realize that COVID may seem to be, with vaccination and perhaps being answered, but I think we've all learned a heck of a lot of lessons about transmission of disease, and we all seem to forget the influenza and other things that transmit, and the opportunity now to redesign buildings so that they do consider disease control for the younger generation. And who are very good at, seems to be always passing it on to the older generation. So can I put a plea in that is part of the remit in thinking about design?
Thank you, Councillor Davis.
Yeah, thanks for that, Councillor Jinman. It's really interesting that you've brought that up, today, because only last week we were talking about other schools that we're working on and looking at not just about how we're ensuring that there's airflow, but ensuring that there's proper outdoor spaces, not least to improve that learning environment. So making sure that we're looking at the mental health of children when we're designing our schools. And there are some brilliant examples in the UK of schools that are doing that. And I want people to say, have you seen the one that Herefordshire's done? And that's where I think we should be placing ourselves. So it's already on the radar and working towards it in all of our design builds.
Councillor Norman.
Well, Councillor Davis has exactly said what I was about to say. You know, we have a lot of schools that practice forest school, working out of doors, and a whole range of really interesting initiatives, which you know, we're all taking on board. I know our schools are all looking at this in a far more favourable way. Anything we can do to enable and support that sort of thing is really welcome, and it absolutely meets some of the points that Councillor Jimman was saying.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I think I'll go to the other group leaders, if I may. First of all, Councillor James.
Thank you, Leader. Nothing really to say about this. I mean, ultimately, I share your concerns about the cost necessarily and the outcomes, and you know, we'll probably judge this into what we get out of this process. So often in the past, we've seen very expensive consultancy and work done, which you know is difficult to justify to the public. You know, making up a very large proportion of the cost of a project. So, but let's hope that this is not the case.
Thank you, Councillor Matthews.
Yes, Leader, we have a legal duty to provide efficient and appropriate education establishments. So I have every faith that the officers have looked at it carefully, and it has our support.
Thank you. Councillor Selden.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Just as someone who went to school in an 18th century building with 20th century add-ons, I have everything but sympathy for people that are going to school in substandard buildings. Just one point that I would like to just raise, and that's the project management issue that we've come across before within the authority. And I'm sure Councillor Harvey's on to this, but the project management does need to be tightened up and make sure everything runs as per the project is managed. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Any other observations from any cabinet? No, so in which case we'll move to the Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, I'd just like to you know, make it absolutely transparently clear that everything is going to get project managed from now on. Everything. So, you know, we're going to run a tight ship.
Thank you. I will go to
Councillor Davis.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Davis.
It's fine. Yeah, I just wanted to confirm that certainly since I've been in my position, I've been really impressed that every build has included ensuring that we've got proper project management behind it, and this is already showing fruition, certainly with Marlborough School, where we are expected to at least come in on time, perhaps before. So it is already working, and it's showing how it can be done properly.
Leader, did Councillor Gandy want to speak?
Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Gandy. Has this gone to, well, whether or not it's gone to scrutiny, if you do want to
Yeah, no, it hasn't gone to scrutiny, Leader. I mean, I fully support this. I'm not wanting to outdo Councillor Selden, but I actually went to a hutted school, a camp school, which was a previous army school where the pipes froze, and so we used to have days off school quite regularly. But I do think actually this is quite an exciting project, so I absolutely support it.
I hesitate to move on. Everybody finished I think so. I'll move to the recommendation, which is that feasibility studies within an approved budget of £475,000 are commissioned to inform a programme of school capital investment work. B, the Assistant Director for Education, Development and Skills be authorised to take all operational decisions necessary to deliver the required schedule of feasibility studies within the approved budget of £475,000, including fees. And C, the Assistant Director for Education, Development and Skills be authorised to take all operational decisions necessary to vary the schedule of feasibility studies should any information received require them to do so. So I'll put that to the vote. If the clerk could remove those who are not voting, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Leader, we have 8 voting members on this item.
Thank you.
And they may cast their vote now. Those recommendations have been approved, Chair.
Thank you.
Unanimously.
Yeah. So thank you for that. If you could move people back in.
Whose dog was that? Was that yours, Leader?
No. Oh, I wish I had a dog like that. No. Ivan Hannibal, he's got a dog.
I did wonder whether it was Jen. She's nodding. It's Jen's dog.
Okay, so thank you very much. We now move onto the last item, Hereford Towns Fund Investment Plan submission. It's to seek approval to accept the grant of £162,000 to support the Towns Fund process, provide endorsement of the submission by the Hereford Funds Board to Government of a Town Investment Plan for Hereford, and for the council to support the bid by agreeing to be the accountable body for the funding. This is on page 53 of the pack, and I would like to welcome Ivan Hannibal from Lincoln, whose football team is doing rather better than Hereford at the moment, further up the league. So we're looking forward to developing our town so that we can compete with Lincoln, with our university as well. Ivan is from a consultancy who's Rose Regeneration. He's worked particularly spectacularly locally with a colleague on consulting with the local community. So thank you very much for that. And also we have Lauren Rogers. Lauren is from local media company, Aurora Media. And I had to say is doing a fantastic job of chairing the committee that's put this together. Anybody else? Roger Allenby has joined. This is proposed by Councillor Chowns. Councillor Chowns, I hope I haven't stolen too much of your thunder.
That's absolutely fine, Leader. And I'll repeat a little bit of your thunder later on, perhaps, shall I? But yeah, I'm really pleased to introduce this item, colleagues. And I know that you're all already familiar with some of it. But just to recap briefly for the record. So in late 2019, central government invited 101 towns and small cities throughout the country to each put forward a town investment plan for up to 25 million to invest in local regeneration. And to do this, towns was asked to form a towns board led by the private sector and to engage with local stakeholders to identify the priorities and projects most appropriate locally. And so the Hereford board was formed last year, and I've been delighted to be the council's representative on the board, and the leader has also attended as an observer. It'd be great to have that support. The board is now in the final stages of pulling together the Hereford Town Investment Plan for submission at the end of next week. And it includes a range of really exciting projects that I think will help to transform Hereford in line with the vision that's been articulated by the board. And I'll read that vision out to you. It's Hereford aspires to be one of the greenest and fairest cities in the country with fantastic opportunities and quality of life for people of all ages. Deeply rooted in our unique rural heritage, we're blossoming into a richly creative, digital, connected and highly skilled place to live, work, study, invest and visit. I think that vision sums up beautifully our lovely, vibrant city. And, you know, and just to give you a flavour, actually, that vision, the subgroup that really worked on that vision included our MP, Jessie Norman, a 20-year-old student, and a couple of local businesses. So it's really kind of representative of, you know, what's happened with the board, bringing together a really wide range of stakeholders. Now, we had a great range of project ideas that came forward from across the Hereford community, thanks to the brilliant public engagement work that Rotary Gen have done for us. And they were all assessed according to criteria directly deriving from that vision from the board, as well as central government Green Book criteria. And you see them in the town investment plan. And the version of the town investment plan that we've had in the cabinet papers is a draft because, you know, because of cabinet paper timetables, the final finishing touches are being put to the plan right now. It'll be published at the end of next week. And I also do just want to say that a lot of great ideas came forward from the community that we weren't able to get into this town investment plan, but we're really committed not to losing that energy and enthusiasm and creativity, and to working with those proposers to see if there are other ways to take those forward in future. So as I've mentioned, this has been a true partnership. It's involved Hereford City Council, the local MP Jessie Norman, the LEP, Hereford Bid, local businesses, the education sector, the voluntary sector, all with the support of Herefordshire Council. And there's been this great level of community engagement in the process, feeding in views on priorities through the survey, dozens and dozens of meetings with local stakeholders and groups. And I want to record here my thanks to everybody who's been involved for the time and the energy and the commitment that you put into the process. It's been really fantastic to see. And I'm especially delighted to be able to thank two people who are here with us today. Lauren, who's done an outstanding job as chair of the board. Thank you, Lauren, for your immense commitment. And also Ivan, who's brought an amazing level of experience, you know, with other similar projects, including 4 other town investment plans, which has really helped the board to compile the plan for Hereford. And it's great to have them here to answer any questions anyone's got. And so since it is recommended that Herefordshire Council be the accountable body for town investment plan funding, I would like to invite Cabinet to support this excellent plan, which I warmly commend to you. And I will hand over to Nick Webster now from the Council's Economic Development team, who has also, I really want to recognise the immense amount of time and energy and commitment that he's also put into this process. So thank you, Nick. And over to you for whatever next. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. Thank you for that support as well. I think it's been very useful, obviously, during the process we've undertaken. So I just want to alert Cabinet to a few other things in the report. Effectively, what we're looking to do today is we're going to look to get your endorsement for the town investment plan submission and agree the accountable body status, as Councillor Chance has said, and that's because it's effectively the town board who makes a submission on behalf of Hereford. And what we're trying to get through this is obtain a town deal with government, and potentially through that access up to £25 million worth of their funding. The investment plan is effectively a strategy and a bidding document for that 25 million. And if the investment plan is accepted by government, then we've got a progress beyond the submission, where we've got to complete business cases for the projects that are included within the plan, where we've got to accept heads of terms, and we'll obviously then have to look at the final funding deal that we get from government. So there's going to be further decision points down this line. This is the first stage of that process, and obviously we need to make the submission for us to be part of that. As Councillor Chance has said, this process has been led by the Townsend Board, and they appointed Rose Regeneration, and I and Lauren are both here today. In the drafting of the plan, we've had significant government guidance that we've been able to follow, and we've had additional support from both the regional government office, but also from what's called the Towns Hub, which is effectively government appointed consultants who have been guiding us and advising us throughout this process, and that's been particularly useful. As Councillor Chance mentions, Rose are currently in the final stages of the drafting of this report, this submission. And we've had comments back in over the last week or so from the individual board members, and we're now going into the final stages of the kind of the graphic design to make it look a living kind of breathing document. I'd just like to touch a bit on some of the projects and some of the process we've gone through. to give you some reassurance that we've had a full range of engagements. So what we'd look to do is select projects up to the full, or as close to the full £25 million as we possibly can. And in doing so, we followed the government guidance, and they themselves have produced a prioritisation tool for project submissions, which we've used in that process. Councillor Chowns has been involved in all those discussions around the project selection. She was on what's called the technical subgroup, who spent many hours looking at the processes and reviewing the projects that come in. And that has resulted in us putting forward 12 projects to or within the town investment plan. Now, 3 of those are council-led, and should they all be successful, we'd be looking at an award of around about 9.5 million for those projects. I'll just give you a quick overview. Those are one project to effectively revitalise the museum and bring that back into a more comprehensive use and look to refurbish that. There's the refurbishment of Maylords. Obviously, we acquired that earlier this year or last year, and be looking at making investment in that to effectively generate more assets, more footfall of what is obviously a key anchor within the city centre. And there's a project around greening the city, which is looking at gentrifying areas of the city, making it a more attractive place to live and work and to visit, and encouraging visitor spend. So those are the council projects. There are a number of other, obviously, private sector and third sector led projects, and they range to projects that are looking at improving the river infrastructure, developing a whole range of skill support. There's some electric buses in there, which are hoping to improve connectivity across the city. There's increased sports facilities and a range of cultural projects. So it's obviously quite a broad mix, all of which are there to look at improving Hereford as a place to live and to work and to visit. So we've been through that process, and we've had some external support in developing that as well. So the council have appointed independent technical advisors who followed that process and made some recommendations back to the council officers and to the board about how those projects that were in the final mix could be strengthened. And over the last 3 to 4 weeks or so, we've been working with those projects to make sure that we can put forward submissions that are the best as possible, and hopefully will lead to the securing of the 25 million. The investment plan and the projects contained within do collectively address a number of the aims and ambitions within the council's county plan. And we're obviously in line with a number of policies within that, particularly around the environment and the economy sections. So, for example, there were projects in there that will look to reduce our carbon emissions, that improve access to green space, and they'll look to grow jobs and reduce unemployment. So the submission by the Townsend Board is in complete alignment with our own corporate county plan. I referred earlier on to the consultancy support that we had through the government, the Towns Hub. They offered all towns what's called a check and challenge session, which is usually about a month out from submission dates. And that's just so that they can give us some indication as to whether or not we're on the right track, whether there's any last minute things we need to do to improve our submission, and to effectively give us a bit of a heads up. We had that session that's at the beginning of January. It went particularly well. Both Lauren and Ivan were part of that session. And I'd like to just read a quote from that, which said, "Significant progress has been made against the criteria in the government guidance, with no major challenges or gaps identified." So I think just to give you all a bit of confidence that the submission is of really good quality and will hopefully secure a maximum amount that we can particularly achieve, I'd like to just give you that reassurance that that has been an independent assessment of the bid that's been put forward. Just a quick reference to the accountable body status. The guidance says, that's been published, that all deals need to have an accountable body, and that lead council should by default act as that accountable body. Now, the council in our particular case is obviously a unitary authority, and therefore the guidance says that we should automatically be considered to be that lead council. And as there is no upper tier authority within the county, the council is expected to be acting as that accountable body. So if we follow the logic of the guidance, effectively there is no alternative for us, or if we want to secure the funding, there's no alternative for us, obviously, to become that accountable body. Now, as accountable body, the council will ensure projects have robust business cases, they meet the council assurance requirements, and we can ensure that appropriate legal and other agreements are in place when we contract with other projects. It does give us an element of ability to influence the process beyond the submission, because obviously we have a stake in the game. So just to give you a bit of reassurance, again, we're following the guidance that's being published. Just to finish off, we've obviously got, as I said earlier on, this is the start of the process, and there's obviously timescales beyond this. So the submission date is next Friday. We're hoping and anticipating we're going to get the submission in next Thursday. So we've got a bit of time for any last minute glitches. Post that submission, we have 3 months to, or government have to take about 3 months to effectively review our document and ensure that it's fit for purpose. They then will issue to us what's called the heads of terms phase, which will set out the offer that they intend to give to us. And the feedback that we've been having is that towns get between 80 to 85% of their ask. Some will get more, some will get less. And it will include also any particular conditions that the government want to levy on us in terms of that funding. Post that submission date, post that heads of terms date, which we're expecting to be April or May, we then have a further full 12 months to work up the detailed business cases for the projects that have been taken forward. As a consequence, it's likely that any funding is going to be filtering down to the council and to the various different projects around the start of financial year 22-23. So this is just the first step on that road to getting that town deal and getting that funding and getting the projects up and running. It does mean that we've got sufficient time to obviously make sure the projects are robust and will deliver genuine benefits, and also will satisfy you and all of the cabinet in terms of any future decisions that we need to take. So that's it from me. We've got Ivan and Lauren on the call, and guided by you, Leader, and Councillor Chowns, if you think it would be useful, we can get Ivan to run through some of the details of the tip. If as I say, if you think that'd be useful for the cabinet.
My gut feeling, just in terms of time and all the rest, is possibly to be more led by questions. Actually, everyone's had the draft document in previous meetings.
Okay. So, any questions? Councillor Harvey.
Yes, thank you. And thanks to everybody for all the hard work that's gone into this. I mean, there's clearly a huge amount, as you say, Councillor Chowns, of energy and enthusiasm that's been generated by the opportunity this Towns Fund has presented to the city. And, you know, I'd like to commend everybody for the fantastic level of community engagement that there's been in this, and so many brilliant and creative ideas that have come forward. Just looking at the coloured document, I've got it on page 83 of our agenda pack. That's going through the bid and the background to it and everything. I flagged this to Nick previously, and I'm guessing that this is still the old version that we had come to cabinet. But in the section on challenges and the performance of our tourism sector, I think the figures that are in there might be a little out of sync with some of the information that's available from what used to be Visit Herefordshire and the Visit Britain. So I think it's worth taking the information in the document that's referenced there as an input, but to just check, because I think Herefordshire has probably got a larger visitor economy than is being represented in the figures here, although obviously we'd always want to do better than that. I've really enjoyed reading the document. I hope that the civil servants at the other end of things like what they see when they get it, and I'd like to thank everybody who's been involved with the work so far for all the energy and effort that they've put in, and it's all been voluntary. So an amazing effort. Thank you.
Councillor Crockett.
Thank you, Leader. I welcome this opportunity. It's something that we've never been involved in the past, and it is an excellent opportunity for us to continue with now. I think what we all need to be aware of is that it aligns with our county plan and understanding Herefordshire as well. So in conjunction with those two things, I think fingers crossed, we will be able to produce many exciting opportunities for the city. Thanks very much.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I just wanted to first a question and comment, if that's okay. So comment is that I think you, Nick, you've undersold the museum project. The most exciting thing about the museum project is that we're going to maintain the Gothic facade. At the last meeting when this was discussed, the amount of people that emailed me to say, are you just going to knock down the museum? No, we're not going to knock down the museum. The whole point of why it's exciting is that we're keeping that facade, the Gothic facade, the Woolhope Room, all of those things that make us a rich heritage centre, we're keeping. We're going to completely redevelop the back of the museum and library as it currently is, and do it to NFIT standards. So it's really exciting, a really exciting project. And I just wanted to say on record, thank you to every single volunteer and member of the community that has come on to that group, and particularly Archetype, who are a local company that specialise in these type of builds, who have given up so many hours that I know they won't have been paid for, just because they're so passionate about this particular project. So really grateful. And it wouldn't be right to not thank Christian Dangerfield for all of his work during this period, constantly on the phone nagging me to make sure that I do things. So really grateful for that. I would want to ask the question, so probably of Ivan, I think. How, from your perspective, how have we formed the tip as it is, and what you've seen, having all of your experience elsewhere, as the uniqueness of Hereford and why our tip looks the way it is? I'd really like to, I think people would be interested to know.
Thank you very much for that. Can I just say, and I'm conscious you've had a long meeting, so I'm not going to warble on too much, but it's been a pleasure and a real privilege to be involved in helping with this. The resonances between Hereford and my own cathedral city are astounding, and I've become a real enthusiast, more than I do on most normal jobs I work on, for what can be achieved through this. And the museum is an absolute centrepiece. Just to reassure Councillor Harvey as well, that slightly rogue interpretation of the visitor economy has been addressed in the latest draft, and we've updated that to take account of a more authentic picture, which doesn't put the performance of the visitor economy in such a stark or negative light, but does continue to emphasise the scope to make it a real asset to build a sustainable economy in Hereford upon. The thing I think that is distinctive about the Hereford bid is the title, The Fairest and Greenest, and it's interesting talking to Government Office, but also thinking about the other 4 bids I've been directly involved in, and a 5th that I helped a little bit with, that is a very authentic feel. There's been some work across all the bids that have been put in so far, and those that have employed very big consultancies or just got people to do it for them, that are a bit identikit, are deemed to not have a level of authenticity which is compelling. And I think the scale of engagement that's taken place, and the fact that the vision that Councillor Chowns read out is genuinely something that local people have informed and developed, and which has then flowed through into the suite of projects, is the real thing that gives that sense of strength and authenticity to the programme. And the reason the government and other people like that, and this is very strong feedback we got from the check and challenge process, is that that's the greatest surety of effectiveness and sustainability, because if it's something that's based around local people's priorities and they engage with it and it reflects what enthuses them, then it's much more likely to be successful and effective than if it's a bit top down. So it really is that focus. And to me, there are a number of different strands in this bid that are really important, but the whole skills piece and the heritage piece are really strong features that really stand out. And every project has its part to play in that portfolio that Nick's pointed out, but the two really strong ones that perhaps absolutely leap up to you are the museum and the Skills Foundry. So there's a mix of things that come together to create a very authentic feel to this bid, which is, as I say, different to some of the more sort of corporate ones that have gone before. So a slightly long answer to your question, Councillor Davis, but hopefully that's sort of covered what you wanted me to answer.
Thank you, Ivan, very much. Councillor Norman.
Thank you. Yes, really heartening to hear that from Ivan and his connection with Hereford and how strongly he felt about it. That's lovely. And like others, I'm very grateful to everyone who's put so much effort into this. It really is remarkable. And what an amazing range of projects we've come up with. It must have been incredibly hard to select, actually, the range of really inspirational ideas. And of course, as someone else has mentioned, they are meeting the needs and expectations of our county plan, relevant to a range of all ages, improving quality of life for our residents and visitors, jobs, opportunities, greening the city, improving cultural, sporting opportunities, really such a fantastic range of things that we are going to be getting out of this. So I'm hugely supportive and enthusiastic about this. Just one small point. There were others that didn't make it to the shortlist, some great ideas out there. So I hope we're going to be able to at least support, point them in the right direction, signpost, do whatever we can to enable those to continue in some way or another as well. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. I've got I'll ask my questions now as I've started. So we're going to be we're proposed to be accountable body, and let's say a third of the projects are council sponsored, so we can control the costs. Hopefully we do a good job of that. The other projects are a little bit out of our hands, but we as accountable body, I think we end up potentially picking up the pieces. And so there is a risk surely there from a council perspective. So I just wondered how that was being covered off, how much due diligence has gone into the non-council projects. And that's a question really either for Ellie or Lauren or Ivan or the Section 151 officer. So that's my first bit of a bounce at that one, I think.
The short answer is lots. I mean, Justine might want to answer that from the finance team, has been, attending all of the meetings. Anyway, I won't steal your thunder, Justine. Do you want to chip in on that one?
Yeah, hi, I'm sorry, I'm project manager, but yeah, I have been working as Andrew had an independent financial assessor commissioned to give the assurance and the overview of the projects and to look at the cost aspects of them as well. And as we said, that report was Andrew, Claire had the report, as did Richard, and it was also submitted to the Tynes Fen Programme Board, and their views were taken on board about any risks and issues. The bigger pictures, you've just said that we do have 3 of the projects are council led, so they will be subject to our council project management, programme management process, the head no PMO process that we have. So they will be managed in the normal way that we do. The other projects that we are looking at how we have that, we are the conduit into that, so that we do ensure that we do have some robustness of the process they're going through and the management of that. It's something we're starting to scope out at the moment. Nick, Roger and I are meeting with Lisa Evans, who's the capital projects programme manager, Monday or Tuesday next week to start scoping that and look at how we do manage that, because that is something we're very conscious of through this process that will have to happen.
Yes, of course we don't want to dampen enthusiasm and that kind of thing. So are we able to provide support to these other projects, Justine? What's our plan for that?
And well, that's what we'll be scoping out next week. I mean, we have been advised by the check and challenge session that all the projects should include costs for project management, finance, resources, the resources that the project needs. And as I said, I've also raised it with our head of PMO, Sarah, that this is something that is on the table that needs to be looked at. As I said, that's what we're starting to scope next week. We just wanted to concentrate on getting the tip, signed off today and submitted next week. But yeah, it's something we're definitely, what we know we have to look at, and we do have to have that. And what we're thinking of, do we have the link and be the conduit in that? We do obviously have our internal projects managed by Verto, but we provide that resource and that link to the external projects, and also still have those managed on Verto as well.
Thank you. My second question really gives an opportunity, hopefully, for Lauren to respond. So, an amazing amount of work and time committed to this project. So once the projects have been submitted, to an extent, that's kind of your job done. But I don't think that's probably right, is it? So what's the continuing function of the town's board from your perspective?
Thanks, Leader. I think it's far from job done, actually. The journey isn't over. So once we get to submission, we then will hopefully get our heads of term agreement late spring. It's actually worth noting, in reference to your last comment, that the business cases, we've been, the guidance is they should be developed to meet the assurance requirements of the accountable body. So that's worth noting as well. So yeah, post heads of terms, we then move into that 12-month phase where we're working up these projects with the project sponsors. And the town's deal that we hope to achieve is a 5-year deal. So we're actually right at the start of our journey. It's just been quite an intensive 9 months, but it's also worth referencing the pipeline of projects. So yes, we have the core list of projects that are included in our TIP, in our town investment plan, but we have a real package now, a folder full of fantastic ideas that have been put forward from a real range of community projects, from third sector, from private sector, and we, as a town's board, will be looking at ways to support those. Again, focus right now is its submission next week, but that's one of the things we'll be picking up. Our next board meeting after submission will be in March, so it certainly continues for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I thought you might say that. Great, thank you, Laura. Councillor Tyler.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Just acknowledging the extreme amount of work that's been done over the 9 months, and to be able to turn around something this big for Hereford City, there's so much gone behind, and it's really exciting. And I'm particularly looking at the project map, and to see all these icons showing exactly what things are going to be shared in the vision in the city centre it's so exciting. It just goes for everybody's range of age and people. And, you go away to different cities and you see loads of different things going on in the city, and to see that vision now and come into fruition, it's just remarkable. And it's just an amazing journey as well. So thank you to everybody who's done such a terrific amount of work, and what a wonderful document. It's just so pretty and just highlights how what a heritage rich we have for Hereford City. So thank you all.
Okay, any more questions at this stage or comments? Okay, I'll move on to the group leaders. Councillor Matthews. Councillor Matthews, are you still there? Yes.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Bob.
Yeah. It's only a small query. I don't know who'll answer it. At least Councillor Harvey, yourself and me constantly bring up the value for money, so at least they know that someone's watching them. On the Maylord Orchard issue, repurposed mixed-use development, learning resource centre. Now, with this 3 million, that means there's 7.2 million gone into there to recoup the lease, etc. Can somebody enlarge me, inform us a little bit on the learning resource centre? Exactly what does that mean? And then also, can they tell us what sort of a return we'll get from that investment?
So who would like to answer that?
I could help with that one, Leader. Sorry,
Yeah,
Councillor Jones. Councillor Jones, do you want to go first? Very welcome to, if you'd like to.
No, you go ahead, Roger.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Matthews. So we've obviously the $4 million that we spent so far was to secure the control of the shopping centre. But when the council did secure it, it wasn't necessarily just to keep it running as a retail centre. Retail across the country, particularly over the last 12 months, has suffered greatly, and really part of the purpose of things like the Towns Fund is to look at how do we regenerate, repurpose, and create a different use for our towns and cities going forward. And therefore, it was always the intention that we would look at bringing in different kinds of uses, particularly a number of the councillors, or all the councillors' ambitions, cabinet members' ambitions, was to create a kind of a social value use as well as a commercial use to mail odds that encourages people to come into the city centre to learn, to develop, to grow, to get to have better prospects for the future, get better jobs, and the like. And therefore, what we're seeking the £3 million to do is to modernise mail odds. It does look a little bit dated now, to better use the space as a kind of a really key site, 145,000 square feet of the city centre, but also to then bring in different kinds of uses, which the Learning Resource Centre is one of the things that's proposed through the council-led project. So that would be a new library and new learning facilities for people to access a whole range of adult and other training and support to help improve skills and access new employment, a community reuse cafe for people to engage local community, for people to engage, to develop their skills and get employment opportunities. And then other projects also are looking to maximise the use of mail odds. So there's an application in the plan for Powerhouse to create a kind of cultural and events and workshop space, and potentially a project led by Rural Media around a culture digital kind of media space as well. So really creating a new vibrant core to the city centre and bringing some money in to help develop and build on the investment the council's already made.
Do you feel that is going to deliver sufficient return for the large investment?
I see Councillor Davis's hand. Do you want to pick up that second one?
Yes,
Come on,
please.
Gemma. Come on,
Yes,
Gemma.
I do. Yes, I absolutely do. I think that we need to look at value for money in a slightly different way and understand that social value isn't about looking at just money. This is looking about how do we increase the skills gap within our society, within Herefordshire, to drive those wages up. So that's the big thing that we need to look at. The second thing is that there seems to be confusion in the public domain as to what we're talking about here. This one specific project, this one from the council, relates to the actual Maylord Orchard shopping centre. The thing that we purchased was the whole of the Maylord Orchard complex. So I just want to make that really clear that they're two separate but very distinct areas, because we've got a number of retail and independent-led sectors that I would hate, shops and businesses, that I would hate to think that they don't think that they're part of our plans moving forward. They absolutely are. It's all about increasing that footfall into Hereford's city centre via that strategic area within town, and they're still a massive part of that. It's just this shopping centre that we're talking about.
Gemma, if you move the library there, what's going to happen to the library building?
The you missed the other project, Councillor Matthews, the museum.
Yeah.
The museum will turn into a full museum and art gallery, where we'll be displaying things that are currently, you know as well as I do, that are hidden away at the moment. We've got lots of treasures that we're not showing, and especially our historic part within the marches. And it's going to focus on that. So that's what the museum building will turn into. So the library will move over to Maylord Orchards shopping centre, and the museum will turn into a museum and art gallery. Very exciting plans. I promise you, Councillor Matthews, when you see the plans, you'll be very excited.
Thank you, Gemma. I'll keep a close eye on you.
Councillor Chowns.
Yeah, I think Roger and Gemma have done a great job there of explaining. I was only going to add that in response to your question, Councillor Matthews, about what is a learning resource centre exactly. I don't know if you've ever been to that Hive in Worcester, but a really modern library. And what that one does is it brings together the town library and the university libraries in one place. Now we're really looking to invest in developing the education economy in Hereford, right, with our new university. So we've got an opportunity to do this. These pieces all fit together beautifully, right? Moving the library into this new, more accessible location, also closer to our educational institutions, where it will help to drive footfall into an area of the town centre that has been struggling in various respects, where we're really doing a great job of regenerating that now that we own it, and opening the space up, modernising it, bringing more people in, and providing a much wider range of facilities, particularly on that skills development side that Gemma was talking about there. So, yeah. Like Gemma said, I hope you'll be very excited when you.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much.
Right, Councillor Selden.
Thank you, Leader. Just to say that I have been absolutely overwhelmed by the public response to this project, and especially the good work that Rose Regeneration has done all over the county, especially in Bromyard, where they've spent a considerable amount of time listening to the ramblings of people like me. The Maylords Orchard project is evolving as we speak, as I understand it. When we first envisaged the purchase of the site, I don't think we really had a clear idea of what this could evolve into, and it's just so exciting to see that even in this short space of time that we've got this fantastic project coming forward, and the way that it's being done. I thoroughly commend everybody that's been involved. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Councillor Hardwick.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Not a great deal more to add. It's a very exciting project. We fully support it. What I particularly like about the document is the vision statement on page 2. I think that actually reads extremely well, and look forward to success on the bid.
Thank you very much. This hasn't gone to General Scrutiny Committee, so there are no comments from scrutiny. Councillor Gandy, I don't know whether you wanted to talk, whether you were in a position to say anything. Councillor Lester's left.
Councillor Lester's already made the comments on behalf of the group at the time before he made the comments on the other items.
Okay.
And I would concur with those.
Fine, thank you very much. Right, I think this is just fantastic. I really do. I think there are some projects here which is going to make such a difference to. Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor James. My apologies.
It's quite all right. I mean, supportive of the whole project. Obviously, some have fallen by the wayside. Some of the voluntary sector projects. I mean, what's been done to manage that, and what will be done to manage? Obviously, well, let us hope all the projects come back with approval, but it seems to be the norm that they don't usually come back with all approval. What will be done to manage those voluntary sector projects? I mean, the council, if they don't get all our projects through, are used to disappointment and can manage that. But some of the voluntary projects which have had a lot of work from volunteers, what can be done to support them if the government don't approve of them?
Lauren, do you want to comment on that from the Towns Board?
Yeah, happy to. Just worth saying that setting of expectations has been kind of running throughout all of our engagement works. We recognise how important that is. Within the tip, I'm not sure even if it's in this draft or our latest draft, is our forward plan, which involves how we'll work with projects. And that will reference how we'll work with projects if they don't necessarily get through. So I've actually just been chatting to Christian Dangerfield, who's supporting Ivan's Regeneration, about getting some of those guys together on a big Zoom meeting, so we can just keep that door open, keep the conversation going, because one of the key things for the Towns Fund is to work in partnership and be transparent about this process, and I think that's the best way to deal with those issues as they come up.
It's unfortunate, Leader, that the acronym of a TIP is an unfortunate description, because I think it misleads a lot of people.
I hope it will become a town deal soon rather than a tip.
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Councillor James. I just think this is tremendously exciting. 5 years down the line, it's not going to be overnight, but 5 years down the line, we could have a world recognised library. Maylords will be transformed. We will have people not just coming to Hereford for the day, but for a couple of days. The cultural offering will be just fantastic. And I think there will be, people will be, they're proud already of living in Hereford, but I just think this will add a new fantastic dimension, quality of life and everything. So I think it's brilliant. And the money, most of it's coming from central government. And to spend 25 million on all this lot compared to, can I say, 250 million on a road, I think there is no choice but to choose to spend it in this way. I just think it's fantastic. Putting concrete down is not a great thing, but these sort of cultural things affecting people, I think it's just fantastic. So, Lauren, thank you for steering us through this, and Ivan. If you hadn't torn all your hair out already, I'm sure you would have done in the last 6 months or so. And Ivan is also a bit of an expert on social value contracts, and so we're looking forward to working on that with you as well, maybe in the future. So thank you. So I'll put this, if I may, to the vote, as it were. So first of all, the recommendation is that the Council endorses the Hereford Town Investment Plan submission to government, which the Hereford Towns Fund Board will prepare, approve and return before the 29th of January 2021. B, the Council acts as the accountable body for the Hereford Towns Fund Programme and any town deal that is agreed with government. And C, the Hereford Towns Fund Board is included on the Council Partnership Register as a significant partnership. And D, the Council accepts on behalf of the Hereford Towns Fund Board the grants of £162,000 capacity funding to support the development of the town investment plan. So if we could have the voting slip come up, Jen, that would be great. Thank you.
Yes, Leader, we've got 8 voting members, just waiting for the non-voting members to leave. And the poll should be on your screen.
Thank you.
Okay, and those have been unanimously approved, Leader.
Thank you very much. We'll bring everybody else back in. So thank you everybody for coming, participating. With COVID seeming to reach a new peak, it's great to have some good news and looking forward to the future. So thank you. It's really positive. Tomorrow we have a council meeting, so I look forward to seeing everybody there. Hopefully, I think that's 10 o'clock. Claire, is that right? 10 o'clock in the morning. And then the next cabinet meeting in public is on Thursday the 28th. That's in 1 week's time, and that's 6 o'clock in the evening. And there are some interesting items on that agenda as well. So thank you everybody for your time. Thank you officers for supporting all this work. Yeah, have a good evening. See you tomorrow.
Thank you.
The live stream could be brought to an end. That would be good. Thank you.